That shades of turbulence as well, right? We started off with government being one of the disruptor of the businesses when the regulations change, to financial crisis, which is a global in nature, to courts coming in and disrupting businesses, to business models changing because consumer preferences change, and of late, capital market as a turbulence which is there, in form of a short seller or in form of any other, the entire narrative, how it changes over a period of time. Uh, how has the entrepreneur or Indian entrepreneur managed to, ride through this turbulence?
So, as a student of Indian history, to whatever extent, I once presented a program for SEBI and all the regulators of Asia, or Southeast Asia at least, and that was about history of Indian capital markets. Tata's did their first IPO in 1908. And the point I'm making is that Indian entrepreneurs have been amongst the smartest in the world. That in the period of Cholas and earlier kings from north, in the period of the Magadha Empire, in the Ujjain Empire, how the king and the businessmen were working together. So these changes in environment, the British came, right? Dalrymple writes about how the businessmen and the money lenders of Murshidabad, their financing mechanism, their recovery mechanism just dumbfounded the British. As businessmen like Rothschild, they were financing both sides of the war or even the aggressor, but it was a business model for them. So I think we underestimate the capability of Indian businessmen, that it is not new. We have been handicapping them. I want to tell you one story particularly of Walchand Hirachand. Walchand Hirachand saw that in the 30s, 20s, 30s, maritime power, the navy power, was the most important thing. It was a tool of power. True. And then he saw that, okay, Indian companies didn't have enough ships and they had suffered on account of, being exploited by the British who completely controlled this. He built a shipping company. He honored contracts. He did visionary things. It went all the way to the topmost powers in England. Who is this guy? And then how they intervened to disturb and destroy him. So I can give you so many stories of Indian entrepreneurs really being top class. The disruption caused by 30, 40 years of socialism was huge. And the shadow it has left on our regulator and bureaucracy, that's still much longer than most people recognize. If we were to recognize that, look, we have got the best guys in the world to beat both Chinese and Americans, give them a chance. Our kids, I work with startups, and some of those kids are doing what America is doing at 1% of the cost, 2% of the cost, 3% of the cost, so we can all come out. So I think government has made a big move in terms of RDI. This 1 lakh crore fund which they made operational a few days back, and a few other things if they do, you're going to see that we can beat all turbulence.
I know you spoke about the fact that Indian entrepreneurs are able to take risk. When you take risk, turbulence comes along with it. Absolutely. As a partner.
Absolutely.
Simple as that. How have they been able to manage both risk and turbulence in your, how you see it actually?
So it's, this is the sanskar part. That if from my childhood, I've heard these stories in my family, that, like my great-grandmother ran a business in Bombay because my great-grandfather died young. So, she had a business, he said, no, I will try. And she didn't last for long, but that is the story. That it was okay for a woman also to run a business some 150 years ago or 100 years ago. So we have the sanskar, we have the culture. The mathematics that we learn from young age automatically gives us a business mind. And all over the country. It is not only that it is in some parts of the country. You had great businessmen in Eastern India. I talked about Murshidabad, and then you had Calcutta people. You had all the southern people where, Vishweshwaraya and other people were there. West, of course, and North also. There were a lot of Punjabi businessmen who were very, very, visionary and capable. So it is because of this sanskar, which got submerged for a few decades, is coming back. They did businesses of all kinds. If our muslin was going to Egypt, if we were selling spices to Rome, such that we caused the first gold and silver boom in Rome. Yeah. So we don't know our history. So Indian businesses can adopt to all kinds of business models given a chance. So the businessman is not afraid of anything. They have to have clarity. You saw a recent example of the Bhushan power, right? Yes. Fortunately, Supreme Court reversed it in a few months. It's very happy. We saw this case of AGR, which Supreme Court is now permitting that a review can be done. Now, these are upheavals that businessmen cannot handle. So these are risks. Therefore, a regulatory environment and risk-taking capability together are the bulk of the ecosystem. So if this is too harsh, that risk-taking capability is not good enough, business skill is not good enough, organizing capability is not good enough. And now I've given you so many cases that, businessmen from all around have, proved that they can manage.
Mr. Bhansali, we were a services economy and infrastructure starved economy as well. Over the last 2 decades, we have seen emphasis on creating infrastructure. And the key to that is execution in that sense. We've seen in Mumbai, sitting here, how the ceiling took 10 years to be built. But today we're seeing bigger projects than a ceiling being built in few years. Do you see this execution capability is part of the entrepreneur spirit or the animal spirit which is being brought into by
very good
businesses?
point. Very good point. See, there will always be, these are like in stock market, you see sectoral rotation. So we have seen Vijayanagar Empire, if you go and visit Hampi, that what sort of roads and planning was there. So we had it, but we lost it. Yes. There will come people who will revive it. You had mathematical skills of businessmen in the past, reflected in some of our scientific, religious scriptures, etc. So we have had these various skills which became prominent at one time or the other. Say, for example, Infosys brought the power of governance and it became a model. Reliance brought a power of, capital markets, execution of a different class, and they taught, there was a time, anybody wanting to build a refinery, a big project, they were taking people, there was only one place, go and take people from Reliance. Today, there are many companies of that kind. So also in building infrastructure, Adani has shown that we can do it. Before that, infrastructure is not only execution capability in terms of pouring cement and molding steel, but it's also in terms of managing the environment. That there are so many local situations to deal with.
Stakeholders.
So many stakeholders, so many governments in this country of different hues, how to manage all of them. So there are too many moving parts and there are softer aspects to building infrastructure in India, which are not easy for everybody to manage. So you have to develop that capability. But one person shows the way, 20 follow. Just as a lot of people followed Infosys, a lot of people followed Reliance in terms of setting up, SR set up a big refinery. Our friends from Indonesia, they set up a PTA plant. Yeah. So people will follow. So Adanis have definitely taken a lead in setting up world-class projects and executing them on time and creating cash flows and then encashing it. So, they were able to place their equity to very smart investors. So I think different businessmen have played different roles at different points of time.
What about capital raising? That's also one of the part of an entrepreneur's journey actually. We've seen in and you're mentoring a lot of startups. We've seen that many of the startups, end up selling a lot of equity in the early years, and by the time they are going public, the promoters have hardly any equity left for them. How do you see that journey as well?
So, once it is a norm in society, I feel less pain. I feel pain, but I say, well, because, for example, when I took Infosys and Z public, later on they became extremely valuable companies. But poor things, they had to give 30, 40, 50% away of their equity away because that was the norm. True. So, the norms also have to change. And so also is startup capital. Startup capital is still rather limited. Startups have another major problem is that they need buying support. A lot of the time they cannot move forward because they say, where is the experience? Unless somebody gives an order, you can't get experience. And US has mastered this. That very few people know that what kind of products, including car, an automobile car, was supported by the US defense. And that's how the car industry boomed in America.
Not just the car, the mobile is
the
also.
Car, so many of these products were supported. Once we start getting those support, the startups will get a big boost. So different businesses require different kinds of capital and different kinds of support. But we have come a long way. And the attitude of the government in terms of now, pension funds being asked to, Mr. Goyal, I think, made a statement that, we need our own private capital. True. So I think it shows the government mind that soon maybe we'll see some changes. So I think we are seeing positive movement on the regulation front also. While I've complained a lot about regulation, it is not against the regulator as much as a philosophy. And sometimes you have the old shadows. So I think we are moving in the right direction. And many a time the startup does not grudge giving away capital as long as his dream gets fulfilled. So the buying support is even more important than just the capital. He says, just buy my product, give me a chance. I'll raise the capital because I can't even raise the capital unless I prove my market fit. So that kind of support is very critical.
Another big challenge which an entrepreneur faces is the change in narrative of the business model midway. To give you an example, the current rally in the global markets is led by AI-led, companies. But there is also a counter view which comes in saying that it's moving towards a bubble, and the valuations which have been given to these companies are way higher than what the revenue generation from these companies would be over the next. We are talking of $300-500 billion investment in AI, which has been talked about. Now, this kind of narrative is prevalent today, but it could change overnight because capital markets have a different mind of their own. And we saw some correction happening over the markets because of this as well. So what do you recommend to entrepreneurs who are in this field, and they need to be anchored to the ground from a point of view that yes, the narrative can change, but you need to be anchored in some way?
So, some people adopt fashion because they must adopt a fashion very quickly. So also in businesses, some people will get taken in by such new commentary and start something or invest in such things. But a lot of people like you and me are not the fashion takers. We'll take a lot of time before we'll change our attire. Yes. Fortunately, same is the case with AI. That while it's a new baby on the block, new kid on the block, and there are people, there's a lot of excitement. But if Mr. Bill Gates and a lot of people have spoken about the bubble in it, there are a lot of people who are cautious and thinking about it. They have just given expression, but they represent a whole lot of people who are more cautious because they've seen internet. They've seen global financial crisis. That, the global, there were these Wall Street firms who were like cat's whiskers. They were gods, they could do anything, but it doesn't last. So whatever is too good to be true, normally is not true. And AI is like that, which means that not that it's false, not that there's no promise in it, but the form and shape and almost manipulative kind of, intercompany holding, etc., that is boosting valuations is well known. And in the short term, anything can happen. We saw Robinhood share price, right? Sure. So even that can happen. That against all odds, the stock price can keep going up every day. So the capability of the markets to be foolish for longer than you can be liquid should not be underestimated.
Mr. Bhansali, my question was with respect to changing narratives in the business actually, and business models. We have a classic example of AI, which is driving valuations globally. Stock markets are running up because of that. While there may be some merit to it, there is also a counter narrative saying that it's a bubble and it may burst. It may burst soon. And what do you suggest to entrepreneurs who see these trends and sometimes they get motivated to move towards that direction, and how do you expect entrepreneurs to evaluate such a situation?
So some people do get taken up by something like this. So for example, every decade I've seen business houses wanting to start a finance company. Right from 85, 86, I've seen, and I handled some of those issues. And they come to grief because it's not their capability. Similarly, petrochemical, when Reliance was booming, people wanted to adopt the Reliance kind of style. So there will be some people who will get taken in. But say, if I look at, say, when Reliance started going up the ranks and became the largest company or a very large market cap company, I've had discussion with older business houses. They say, look, we get our time in the sun, somebody else gets a time in the sun, if we don't forget our business model. So the mature people are clever enough or wise enough not to get swayed by, some new business style narrative emerging. But if they fail to see the underlying technology, then it's trouble. Infosys brought governance. If you did not see the power of governance, you did not see the power of employee motivation, you were in trouble. But do you have to become Infosys overnight? You don't. So AI is like that. It's a new technology. It's a new way of doing things. You must study and adopt the technology. But you don't have to enter that business. So I think that distinction we have seen in the past. Some who, went, for example, if you remember in the SEZ era, everybody was announcing SEZs. A lot of them got into trouble, either from regulator point of view or financial point of view. So I think one has to be cautious about every new fashion, so to speak, in business. Don't get swayed by it. That we can only wish. But then those who haven't built that sanskar, who haven't built that execution capability, haven't built a growth engine inside, they get tempted by easy growth outside.
In the last 4 decades, we've seen the flow of capital. We were all country which were dependent on foreign capital coming in. And in the last decade, or maybe last 5 years or so, we've seen domestic capital now overtaking the foreign capital. Is that a indication of emergence of the new India and how it can power entrepreneurship as well?
Yeah. So I must talk about regulation, right? It was in post-1985 that we started talking about a vision for India. At that time, the vision was for 2000, and transparency and things like this started to happen. That's how the CB Act got passed. That's how mutual funds were allowed. That's how, foreigners were allowed to start up mutual funds. So Morgan Stanley started with the State Bank of India, right? The first growth fund was with State Bank of India. They were not allowed by themselves. And I remember having gone around for banks and institutions because they got licensed, but they had no understanding what mutual fund was. But opening your mind to new possibilities, the regulators have helped capital markets become amongst the best in the world. So, when we did DMAT in the late 90s, people didn't know the power of DMAT. and we converted 99% of our paper into DMAT in just 2 years. Nowhere in the world that has happened. So this is the execution and capability that we have. So if the regulators keep moving in this direction, and it is because of this that allowing SIP, allowing so many mutual funds to come in, allowing electronic trading, shrinking the period of IPO listing. It used to be 3 months. I mean, getting a clearance from CCI and then even SEBI used to be so long. Everything is crunching. This modernization of regulation and delivery has enabled all this to happen. And this shows that we have mathematical and common. This country is the foremost mercantile country in the world. And that includes understanding law, understanding business, understanding account, math, etc. So I think it's a reflection of the regulatory attitude. How IRDA was, how IRDA is, how RBI has changed over a period of time, from caught sleeping in the early 90s to where RBI today is, creating a sandbox that, okay, you can test your new technology, creating CBDC and so on and so forth. So I think as this happens, this what you're talking about, SIP and etc., because we had the savings habit, we haven't tested the gold instruments enough, but that's another huge possibility that we have. We haven't tested the land as a, tokenizing land and, converting it into liquid assets. So there again is the whole our title property, title management, etc., still needs a lot of change. So as we will move on regulatory reform and dynamism everywhere, you're going to see these financial markets expand and expand and expand.
And how should entrepreneurs look at it from that point of view? You've seen a lot of issues coming in. Many are fairly priced, but many are also overpriced. They're riding the wave of capital
Many
markets.
are underpriced also.
Yes.
Let me give an example of Suzlon, right?
Yes.
It was about about 3 years ago that they issued right issue at 10 rupees. The stock was below 10 rupees. It hit 100 rupees in some 15 months' time. So they were undervalued also. So if we take away the stock market's idiosyncrasy, so to speak, or the readiness to make a mistake about these things, we will take the stock market away. We'll go back to controller of capital issue. We should not control these things. These are inevitable mistakes because the market is an emotional cum rational place. It's because there are emotions, there is a stock market. Every day, there will be only one seller. There are people with different emotions, positions, etc. They come and the interplay of that is the market. So I wouldn't worry about valuations, etc. I would worry about facilitation of easier trade. From a 2-hour open outcry system when I started my career in the markets, to now we're talking a 24-hour market. So this is fantastic evolution. And nothing, I think if the overall regulatory system has to take inspiration, what can happen with easier regulation is capital market. Is what has happened on our payment system. Bring in technology, bring in transparency, take controls and bureaucracy out of everything. What can happen? These are 2 fine examples to show the potential of our country.
So if there's one thing that you want to tell the new age investor who is tech savvy, who uses his mobile to do investing, whether it's an IPO or is in the stock market, how to go about investing or believing in businesses or entrepreneurs, what will be?
So just as what applies to entrepreneurs applies to investors. When I talked about that you have the wisdom, you have the execution capability, you have a business proposition, so also the investor must ask, do I have the knowledge? Am I taking the right amount of risk? Do I have the wisdom to move out in and because I can't predict the future, no one can predict the future. So if I don't have this kind of these traits, then I want to predict the future. I want to play the shortest possible term because I am the smartest guy. And people have seen only bull markets, so the bull markets will run forever. That is the trap. So this wisdom is nothing new. For all ages, it is the same thing. Cut your coat according to what you have. Be your core competence. Work within that. Build your core competence more and more. There are so many courses to educate yourself. Use safer instruments. And if you don't do fundamental understanding, if you don't develop fundamental understanding of something, you will always lean on rumors and charts and things like that. That's not reality. That's just a business model for some people to tell you, oh, I know the future like an astrologer. It doesn't happen that way.
Mr. Bhansali, it was a pleasure talking to you and
My
getting
pleasure. Thank you
to understand and get that knowledge which you have been in the market for nearly 4 or 5 decades now to our viewers. Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.